I'm Dave. I'm the creative director on Dead by Daylight.
So Dave, you've done a lot of work in this game over the last few months. Can you talk about like what sparked this movement of changing so many survivor perks in such a shorter period amount of time? It had to have been a daunting task.
Yeah, it was one hell of a task. It was huge, and it has been in our backlog forever. We knew that we wanted to shake the meta in a big manner. We've been updating perks over the years and made changes here and there, but we knew that only massive changes to core components of the game and to really the meta perks would make the trick. And the thing is that in any type of game that has so many components, as soon as you kind of pull a string somewhere, you change a little thing, all sort of different things will follow and will need also changes to make sense in the overall balance of the game. So that's why it's such a huge patch.
Can we get into your thought process a little bit? Because I think a lot of people were happy with the changes, but a lot of people were also upset. But at the same time, they don't have access to a lot of the data that your team has access to at Behavior. They don't see the percentage of people taking this perk, the percentage of win rates, the kill, whatever ratio like that's data you have that no one else can see, only Behavior can see.
Correct. First of all, I have to say that these kind of change never comes from me. I have an amazing team that's working on exactly that, all the perks, all the live changes, and analyzing all the data that we receive and the community feedback that we get. The player sentiment is also very important, the perception of each of the perks and balance. So yeah, like you said it, we do have access to data and to the usage of these perks, and how some combination will affect the win rate or the type of scenarios that we'll see in a match. And so one strategy that we had here is to look at the outliers, of course, in power, but also in weaknesses, and find fun gameplay changes that would bring back that power curve of insanely strong or used a lot to super weak, you never used, and bring them back to a happy middle. We believe it's one of our core pillars that we embrace chaos. And so the more tools are available, the more different scenarios will come up in the game and the more interesting Dead by Daylight will become. So that's where we're going with.
And then moving on to your new chapter, the Resident Evil chapter is making a return, which is great. That chapter was very successful for you guys on the sales front. It got a lot of new people into the game. You brought Nemesis into Dead by Daylight, and you brought Leon Kennedy and Joe Valentine, like two of these video game icons. So this new DLC, like, was that something that you originally got, you guys, if you can talk about it, you originally had planned to do, or was that a direct comparison to the first chapter of Resident Evil doing so well? Capcom's like, let's do another one.
Yeah, well, I can definitely not talk about details. I can say that for some of us, it was a surprise. It's not part of our model to go back to the same licensed universe twice. But Resident Evil is so rich of a universe that it just made a lot of sense to bring back some characters that we didn't explore.
Yeah, it's really crazy how this game can pan out. You guys have like the Hall of Fame. Matthew always says the Hall of Fame of horror. Like it's got to be difficult because you guys do 4 chapters a year, about just give or take, and every time you do a chapter, it's usually one survivor and one killer. But those perks completely change the meta system when you release them into the game because every survivor can take them. Like, how do you tackle that to make sure that nothing's severely broken? I mean, you do have the public test server, of course, but
yes. Well, when we look at our production pipeline, we see that there is, like you said, there's 4 chapters a year. So, every 3 months we release something, but there's actually people working on these chapters for 9 months and even a little bit better, longer period of time sometimes. So we do have the time to really think about what we want to create, how we're going to do it, how we're going to implement the strong fantasies that come and the themes that comes from these different licenses. To make it ring true to the fans of these franchises, and of course we go through various tools and iteration process to polish these ideas. Just for the perks, for example, I think we already talked about this actually, but it's always good to talk about it. We usually start the process per character with about 12 perks that we find are interesting. that comes from a backlog of ideas, or brand new ideas that come from the themes of this specific character. But only 3 will end up in the game. And so there's a lot of weeding out that needs to happen through all of these cool ideas, or it seems to be cool ideas when we start.
Your game is so much different in terms of how you tackle it. A lot of people would have done like Dead by Daylight 2, or like they would have done a soft relaunch, but you guys are continually updating your game, not only with content, but you're redoing the maps as well. The maps, some of the maps were looking their age, and you guys are now rolling out brand new maps that look absolutely phenomenal. Like, what's the biggest challenge of that part for your job? That you can't build a new engine, right? You can't start over. You can't make a sequel, right? Because you lose a lot of licenses. So like, what's the hardest thing about having to keep a game as a service that's been around for as long as yours?
Yeah, that's correct. And, we do it because it makes no sense to go to another title. Our fan base is here, and, all the content we've created is still relevant, and we want to keep it alive for sure. Yeah, one challenge is to make sure that when we build something, that it has all the access possible so that we can modify it easily in the future, that it will be able to mix and match in the future. And sometimes we have features in our mind that are coming. We don't know exactly when. They're part of the backlog. They're great features. And we always have to think about them so that we don't ruin them by implementing something in the present day, that would make that thing in the future not work or irrelevant. So it's always like working with our past and with our future.
Now your new killer Wesker has a really cool power. He does like a lunge and he grabs and he throws. Was the point of Wesker to make a more approachable, easy to learn nurse mechanic? Because he's very similar to Nurse in that regard in terms of like his lunging.
Yeah, that's a good point. It was important for us that Wesker was accessible, easy to approach and understand. So yeah, it was definitely part of the design core pillar of this character, because there's, I'm guessing, a lot of people that will want to try Wesker, so it needs to be accessible to a lot more individual than a more difficult killer to use. But yeah, it's a very cool power. It makes you feel like really Wesker's superhuman abilities are accessible to you. It makes you feel a bit like a god amongst humans.
When you were making him, I mean, he lunges and he hits objects, right? That's his whole thing. Like, what did you like? Did you take lessons from Blight, like originally, because he interacted with a lot of the environment and bounced around? Like, is that what kind of you developed Wesker around as well? Like to try to have him interact with the environment a little bit more, like actually hit objects in the level?
Yeah, definitely. We have lesson learned from the Nurse, from Blight, from other fast-moving characters. Making a character that has a lot of movement speed is always a challenge. Like, movement speed is one of these stats that it is extremely difficult to work with in Dead by Daylight and to balance because of all the chases and all the perks that come into play on Survivor side and on Killer side as well. So definitely we used Past Killer to have a head start, and then a lot of prototyping.
What were some of the challenges in redeveloping the Resident Evil map? Because that was a 1-for-1 map from the game, and it was a great representation of that video game, but a lot of it didn't work essentially in the game. A lot of hallways, a lot of corridors, you get caught easily. You guys are redoing that map. What was that process like for you?
It was very awesome when we finally decided that we were going back to Resident Evil for another chapter. We knew that we were not going to introduce a new map, but we knew that this map had a lot of issues. And so we were kind of relieved that we'd be able to go back to it and make some major fixes, use the time that we have on a chapter usually to think about fixes. So yeah, that was a great feeling. We made it more porous, we made it smaller, made 2 different variations so that it's easier to navigate and just makes overall way much more fun to play.
Dave, a bit ago, MMR Matchmaker was introduced to mixed reviews. At the time, there were no public plans to include anything to affect MMR numbers other than kills and escapes. Do you feel that this is still an effective system, and are there any plans to further develop a more complex system?
Right, I can answer that one, not with a specific yes or no, but with what we've been doing. So as players can see, we've done a bunch of tests to do different type of matchmaking. If the one that's still in is because it's the one that's more relevant at this time. We're still looking to make this even better. MMR is a central aspect of any multiplayer game. It's really, really important. It's hard to get right. And our game is weird. We can't base ourselves on other classic MMR of symmetrical games. So we'll need to find our own recipe, and we're working towards that.
Are there any plans to include a non-binary survivor?
That's interesting. I like these themes and and these representations. As we shown this year with David King, and as we talked about it too, it's a first step towards this type of representation. I mean, I don't have anything official to say or when, but it's definitely something that is of interest.
Are you concerned about the number of perks is going to become untenable? Both balance and game knowledge for new players is tougher with each update. As of right now, you already have 200 plus perks, and it's pretty tough.
It is. It's one problem with having a game that's so rich. Of course, we want to keep our veterans interested, and we want to have more and more and more. But like you said, it's getting more and more complex. You play the tutorial and you get a little bit of an idea of how it works, and then everything kind of explodes and falls apart because every killer is different and every perk combination can make the game different. But I think it's part of the fun. It's part of the discovery, and a new player will have a lot to learn. But I think it's really interesting to get into these details. The parallel I like to do is like a card deck building game. There's a lot of possibilities, but they all rely around the same kind of systems. And so you really just have to learn these systems, and there's a few. And then all of the rest is, components. Use these components to make variation.
Your team recently reworked Legion and Ghostface, and they've been out for a while now. Have you seen notable changes to those characters' performance post-rework on your end?
Yeah, both Ghostface and Legion, we've seen a good player sentiment towards them. We've also seen in the data that they're now more healthy in terms of balance. So we're happy with the changes.
With the new changes to sprint speed and duration after being hit, have you considered adjusting the tile layouts to bring tiles closer together?
Like map tiles?
Yes. Yeah, map design.
Oof, no. Well, no. I'll only answer that for now.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, no.
Can you give us any information on the whereabouts or safety of Maurice? After the release of Dredge, a lot of players became concerned about him.
Yeah, shit. I'm concerned too. I don't know.
What's it like doing the design process for splitting a map with a fixed layout, like with the new changes to RPD? We kind of talked about this a little bit already.
Yeah, well, it's RPD is an east and a west wing, and both of these wings, they were thought of almost like they were individual maps. I mean, when you're considering the chases metrics and the different perks and the range of different powers, it really stands all in one of those wings. So it really made a lot of sense to cut them into two parts. So it wasn't, I mean, I won't say that the level designer didn't work hard to do it, but it wasn't the most complicated map to do a split.
What's it like having to balance between staying true to the source material versus dealing with the internet love of innuendo? In this case, for example, Hellraiser, Pinhead, the players could handle him opening the box, but not when he came.
Yeah, you know what? We don't balance anything of such. Our community is just amazing, and we'll find all the innuendo they need to find, and it's great.
Have you seen significant shakeup in the most commonly played perks post-overhaul?
Oh yes, absolutely. And I won't go into the details. It would be a very complex chat, and I don't feel I have the expertise to go into details. But definitely a lot of change. It went into the right direction. There are some tweaks that are still necessary to have the full potential of that release that our designers are looking into.
What else can you tell us about Dead by Daylight that players can look forward to?
We have a lot more surprises that are coming for the current chapter, but also for other chapters that are coming. We are also planning on other big changes to core components of the game. As we've revealed in the anniversary, we're still working on the Mori refactor. And that's a big part of some friction that's been going on in the community. So it's definitely something that we're working towards. That's going to be really, really cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm specifically hyped about the chapters that are coming.
And I have two other fun questions. You don't have to answer them, but like, you guys are now making a new asymmetrical game that's in
Right.
a closed beta right now. Like, are you involved in that at all? Like, is it a separate team? Like, how is that working for you? Are you taking lessons from Dead by Daylight and that game and implementing them and vice versa? Because it seems like a really interesting game.
It's a good question, and yeah, it's Meteor Maker is an amazing game. Do go and try to get the beta key if you're not in the beta, or at least go check it out. It's a very interesting asymmetrical game, and it's absolutely a different team. There is no way a single team could be handling two games like this. They're huge games, so different teams. But of course, we're the same studio and we work together. Ash Panel, the creative director of Meteor Maker, was a creative director on Dead by Daylight at some point. We're good friends. And of course, we share knowledge. We make sure that we always learn from our good things and mistakes from past projects. Yeah.
Who needs sleep? Just don't sleep. Just work 80-hour weeks. It's fine.
Yeah.
And my final question, and I know you can't answer it, but I have to ask it anyway. So any update on the Stranger Things rumors that have been surfacing on the internet?
Right. No, I can't pass.
Okay. I figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
It's awesome, Dave. So when does the Resident Evil chapter hits our consoles and PCs? Or the next one, Project W, when does that hit?
It is available right now. You can go play on all the different platforms that it's available on. So PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, PC, Steam, Epic, all of them.